Hello everyone, I am potroastmom. Welcome to my channel. This is my friend Rocco. He's also my assistant today. This is Fawcett. I doubt she will offer any assistance. Today I want to discuss something incredibly important. No nonsense, if you will. And that's books. But specifically, books that I openly despise. I really only discuss books on my Patreon, so if you want to see books I like, hit us up there. These are all my opinions, right? Sometimes I have bad opinions. Mostly I don't. But anyways. So I have read lots and lots and lots of books that I don't like, but to get me to despise a book, I have to feel like it wasted a significant amount of my time. And so the books that I despise are all series where I invested in more than one book only to find out something horrible and not continue on. Fawcett. This is my life. Before we get started with things I really hate, I do want to talk about the books that did irreparable damage to my psyche as a teenager. 1, 50 Shades of Grey. Why was I reading that as a teenager? I don't know. Also, huge shout out to this book. Oh, and I should mention that I read most of my books on my Kindle, so I don't have physical copies to hold up and show you. So I'll just show you here. This book I read as a teenager, and it gave me a full-blown eating disorder. So that is very, very cool and awesome. My third on the list of books that did irreparable damage to my psyche as a teenager, the Bible. That's a joke. Not because it didn't do damage to me, but because I've never read it. I want to say that a book doesn't have to be good for me to like it. I like low vibrational books. For example, I loved the Ice Planet Barbarian series. I read like 11 or 12 of those books. I think they're very good. One man's trash is another man's treasure. And both men are me, you know? In 2022, I read 82 books, like finished 82 books. I have a really bad habit of starting books, and the second they say one boring thing, I'll leave them. So I don't even know how many books I started in 2022. And you know what? That's actually kind of why I hated these series so much, is because I usually stop reading a book, but for these series I went hard, you know? I was ready to like them, and they let me down in the most devastating of ways. Also, in 2023, which is sort of the year we're kind of in now, ultimately, I have finished 24 books. But hear me out, I have started 72 books. Also, I do want to, just in the honorable mentions, mention Colleen Hoover. I've never read any of her books, just on principle. I have never met anyone who liked her books after they read them. And after all that stuff happened with, like, her son, I'm just not going to. Also, she writes, like, domestic violence and sexual assault into her books, which is crazy. And I don't know this about her at all, but I do strongly believe that she would be the kind of person to refer to herself as like a boy mom. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean. The community of, like, the romance book community on like TikTok, Book Talk, and on Instagram, Bookstagram, they can often promote books that aren't that good, and then all of a sudden everyone's reading them, and that tells you that, oh, this book must be good. But a lot of times they promote and bring to mass popularity books that just aren't good. And I feel like that is what's happening here. Keep in mind, this is my opinion. This is my opinion. This is mine. What's your opinion? I think I'm right. Also, I do want to acknowledge that it takes a lot to write a book. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. It takes skill. And publishing a book is something to be proud of. I hope you guys can see Fawcett because she's so stinking cute. I love you. Anyways, Coupon's asleep on the window. I should have made it to where you can see all 4 of us. 5 of us if you count the pot roast pillow, which I always do. Just to recap where we are right here. I've never read the Bible. I'm never going to read Colleen Hoover books, and I am a fair weather friend to books. I will ditch them so quickly. We're summarizing what has already happened so we can move on. Let me tell you about a book series called Crystal Bloom. The first book, it's called To Bleed a Crystal Bloom, and it was not good, but it was extremely intriguing. Like, it created so many questions and like had a plot that was so all over the place. It intrigued me because I thought, oh my gosh, surely in the next book, the plots will weave together. We'll get answers to some of these questions. I also at the time thought that the main couple that would be like endgame, I did think it would be a girl and a guy who was a few years older than her. You know who is actually, oh, I should say I'm going to spoil this. I'm going to really spoil this whole series. So if you want to read it, you probably don't listen. The end game in this book series is actually the girl and the man who raised her. He raised her since she was 2, and now they are in a romantic pairing. But at the end of the second book, she does kill him, which was mad cool, but she brought him back to life in the third book, which was not dope. Anyways, the second book, I started reading it. I'm thinking, wow, okay. You know what? It's okay that it's kind of creating more questions in my mind, and it's, I don't know, the plot is getting thicker. I thought, oh, surely when this comes together, it'll be like euphoric. It'll all make sense. I'll get the answers to my questions. I was still intrigued. Something that really bothered me in the second book, and there are people who can articulate their feelings on why a piece of media is bad or upsetting or bad. I don't think I'm incredible at it, but I'm giving it my best shot. Anyways, throughout the plot of the first book, she's like addicted to 2 drugs, and she like goes into withdrawal, and it's like a big part of the plot, right? In the second book, she like leaves her home for the first time and she goes without drugs, and so you think it would be like, oh, she's going into withdrawal, she's going to be without drugs for the first time. They actually don't mention the drugs at all in the second book, which is so dope and cool. Also, they do something that I really, really hate, which is just like plopping LGBTQIA plus just for the sake of it. You know, it's not the two, they were 2 gay men, a couple in the book. They were just kind of plopped in there with like horrible stereotypical like lines, and like it just felt very cheap. It felt like, just don't put them in there. Don't plop a gay character in there as like a performative, like, look at what I write, I'm very cool. See what I said? I can't articulate it very well, but it's not for lack of trying. Anyways, the second book. Also, besides the drug, she's away from the man who raised her for the first time. So it's like, oh, she misses him. And even though she's not in withdrawal because that plot fell off. By the way, it comes back in the third book. You know, sometimes plots come out of their hole and people don't talk about that enough. The man just follows her to the new continent. Her boyfriend? I'm assuming they're mates. I don't know. This is a high fantasy book. I guess I literally could have given you a synopsis of the book. It was pitched in the first book as like a dark Rapunzel retelling, and I like dark books. I read a lot of dark romance. I read a lot of books that have like trigger warnings on them and stuff. This book was just, it wasn't dark. It was just, Whatever it is when a girl ends up with the man who raised her. Whatever that is. Oh, also, I'm just going to put the synopsis of the book right here. I'm sorry I didn't do this before. I hope you forgive me. Should I put the second synopsis of the book? No, you'll get it. You'll get it and you'll be fine. Okay. So I read the second book. At this point I hate the series, right? I'm like, this is insane. The second book answered 0 questions. There were plot holes. There were all kinds of just truly insane things. The third book. One thing about me is I will hate read something. Like if I hate a series, but it's compelling, I'll keep reading it. And that was this series for me until halfway through the third book. She kills him in the second book. Like I said, it was very dope and cool. And she, in the second book, is like, I am positive I struck him in the heart with this talon. And then I'm like reading the third book. He's not coming back to life. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is incredible. And then she starts hinting that like he'll come back to life. And you know how on Kindle you can just search for a word within the book? I searched for the main guy's name. It's this. I don't know how to say that. Like, is that Rorden? Also, her name is this, which I assume is supposed to be said like Orla, maybe? I don't know. Anyways, I searched for the main guy's name, and I saw that he comes back to life on page 412. And he's like, you missed my heart. And she's like, oh my God, thank God. Like, I couldn't live without you. The third book was 591 pages. The second book, 538 pages. I think what made me hate this book, what took me from dislike to hate was all the time that I invested in this book. And the first book was 488 pages. This book, all the characters seemed to be showing growth, right? But the main character, Orla, just like regressed and like went deeper into like her spiraling. And then in the third book, back into her addiction that didn't exist in the second book. I refused to get over that. She just kept devolving. And the way that this writer writes, I didn't know the term for it until I told someone about how much I hated it. It's purple prose. Like, the sentences are so like circular and dizzying and just, in a word, not good. It's crazy how I got through the first and second book. That was so brave of me. Don't read it. The next book series I want to talk to you about is called Something in the Way series by Jessica Hawkins. This book was pitched to me by someone who I follow on TikTok. You gotta be so careful getting book recommendations on TikTok and Instagram. I'm telling you that right now. And this person said it was one of their favorite series they've ever read. And they are like a really big reader, like read over 100 books last year. Really, really love books. So I was like, oh my gosh. And I had taken several recommendations from this book creator anyways. So I'm like, oh my God, I got to start this. I only got through 2.5 books. That must just be my limit. You know, that must be the most that I'm capable of when hate reading something. This is pitched as like an age gap forbidden romance. It's not really that big of an age gap for a book. I don't think in real life I would be like, that's cool. And I love forbidden romance. Okay, I love a forbidden. Give me like a princess and a bodyguard. Give me a younger sister and a brother's best friend. Do you know what I'm talking about? The forbidden aspect of this book, and once again, I am going to spoil it. Okay, so this is the synopsis of the Something in the Way series for the first book. So basically, the main guy, I can't remember how many years older than her he is, but it's not like that many. I mean, it's inappropriate, but like he definitely did not have to start dating her sister. So he starts dating her sister as like a way to be close to her. Barf. Barf City. Ooh, big stretch. What's happening now? What's going on? Wow. Hitting me with all four paws. Very slay. Okay, so as the kids say. So he starts dating her sister, which we have established is barf.com. And basically, the younger girl goes to summer camp. So the guy and her older sister decide to become camp counselors. It's really the guy wants to be a camp counselor, and the sister who is portrayed as this like very ditzy, very annoying, very mean-spirited girl, which just annoys me. Anyways, once he wants to become a camp counselor, she's like, oh, I want to do it too, whatever. And it's multiple POVs, so like you can see the guy is just like constantly annoyed by the sister. Okay, here's what happens next. He takes the younger girl with him on like a drive, and they get pulled over by the police, and the car matches the description of a car driving away from a house that just got robbed. Like all this stuff happens, and the guy ends up going to jail. It turns out her sister, the older sister, the one he's dating, saw them sneaking off into his car and was the one who called the cops on him. So then the next book, it describes like him being in jail or whatever, him getting out. And when he gets out of jail, he literally marries her sister and gets her pregnant. What? That's not forbidden love. That's someone who doesn't love you. Do you know what I mean? Next, I want to talk about Sarah J. Maas, who is not an author that, you know, she doesn't have any series that I hate. And I do have to say thank you to her, because I read a lot when I was a child and a teenager, and then I went to college, and all the enjoyment and the fun got sucked out of reading for me. And so I didn't start reading again until 2020. Coupon randomly has a limp today. I've had, like, how much longer will the dramatics continue? Come up here, Soup. Come here, my queen bean. Oh, yeah, so I didn't start reading books for enjoyment again until 2020, world pandemic. I don't know if you guys remember that. And I picked up the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which is like incredibly popular. It's getting made into a TV show, and it just like exploded on Book Talk and Bookstagram after the pandemic. So I read those books, and that reminded me, they're a high fantasy romance story, epic plot over like five books are out now. Maybe 6, I don't know. It's been a long time since I read these. And so I do have to say thank you for getting me back into reading. But I don't know, just as like I read more and more and more better books, I can like see the problems and the issues with Sarah J. Maas's books. And there are, I mean, you could write novels, you could write a thesis, you could write for the rest of your life trying to take apart and analyze all that is wrong with her series, and I don't want to do that. I just want to tell you that I read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I thought it was good at the time, but the last book, I'm going to spoil it. Cassie and Nesta get together in the last book, And I wanted so much from her because she's like a villain in all the other books, but she's really just a deeply complicated person. And so I was hoping for more emotional growth from her in the last book. I just really related to her character because she's like out drinking and being wild and like just generally hateful. And I don't know, I used to be that kind of person, but it wasn't out of malice. It was because of like internal suffering that I had yet to heal. God, sometimes I sound like a self-help, like someone who would lead a conference on like self-confidence. And I don't want to sound like that. What was I talking about? I always lose my sentences. They drift away from me. Like dandelion puffs on the wind. Also, I read her Throne of Glass series. I thought it was a waste of time, but that's probably because it's young adult, and I don't like young adult books. I am going to say something positive about a young adult book at this time, just to kind of add some positivity back into this video. The Folk of the Air series by Holly Black. So good. So good. So good. So good. And it's young adult. Thank you for letting me tell you about the books I don't like. No books I hate. Tell me about what books you hate in the comments. Don't forget. And maybe just tell me about whatever books you're reading in the comments, you know? I love books. I love them so much. Okay, thank you for listening to me. I hope you come back to my channel. Subscribe so you can be alerted when I'm back on my bullshit. Okay, I love you. Bye.